Okay, so Esoteric Fire, we're going to go ahead and have another little podcast here. We're going to be talking about something very pointed and interesting. It's kind of a thought that's been coming up in my mind because with all of the crazy news that keeps happening all of the time, we keep running into a common refrain with a lot of people. You'll get a new story and they'll say, "Oh, are you paying attention yet? Oh, they're trying to go ahead and take your kids. Are you paying attention yet?" And you have like half of the nation, or half, maybe 60-70% of us that are like, "Oh yeah, no, we totally get it." But what about the other 30%? Why are they holding on? And
Totally.
it got me thinking about the outer planet over the past 50 or 60 years or so. And it's a very unique setting that nobody really talks about, is that our generation, like everyone alive today, has something in common with their charts from the ages of 54 and younger. And they all have an outer planet in Scorpio, whether it's Neptune in Scorpio, Uranus in Scorpio, Pluto in Scorpio. When it comes down to the major decision of our lifetime today, which we think is a decision of life and death, right? Whether you believe the narrative or you don't, right? We all think that taking a certain thing is going to be the difference between people living and dying. Okay.
Right.
And
so let me start.
Go ahead.
Go on.
Well,
I was going to explain what eighth house in the chart is. I was going to explain what the eighth house in a natal chart is, just so that people understand when we're talking about Scorpio, for the people that are not too familiar with astrology. Eighth house, well, Scorpio rules the eighth house of the zodiac chart. And everyone has a house in Scorpio. It could be first, second, third, fifth, 11th, 12th, eighth, but what does eighth house Scorpio traditionally mean? Well, it represents death, transformations, surrendering, control and manipulation, power struggles, the underworld, the dark side, mafia, mobsters, secrets, investigations, private investigator, someone who digs deep to get to the bottom of things. It's a place of uncovering the truth, doing research, studies, I would even say lab work, metaphysics, obsessions, disgrace. It's a huge house for many things: scandals, bankruptcy, obstacles, misfortunes, accidents, surgery, your length of life, right? Because that's when you know how long you're going to live. Your eighth house determines that. Inheritances, money from other people, shared resources, wills, insurance policies, tax returns, your credit card, your credit, that's eighth house. Monetary gains from your partner, spiritual practices, mediums, intuitives, psychics, chronic and long-term sicknesses, STDs, and your life force. So eighth house is a very important house.
Yeah.
Everyone has one. Not everyone has a planet in their eighth house. Not everyone has, generally speaking, but when we look back between 1967 and 2005, majority of us that are, everyone that's born within those years has an outer planet. An outer planet, and it's Scorpio, and be it Neptune, Uranus, or Pluto. Yeah.
And this is the fun concept, because if you pay attention to a lot of the other, the more like top astrology understanding of Scorpio, people love to talk about sex. Right, is an instant Scorpio theme, and you kind of pay attention to when, again, you're talking about 1967 to 2005. You're talking about people currently from the ages of what, like 15, 16 to 54, right?
Yeah.
And the topic of sex really did ignite, in a weird, in your face.
Oh my God,
way.
It's true. And then in the 1980s,
exactly. In the 80s, 90s, 2000s,
60s, remember?
Yeah, right.
60s with like the rock and roll. Oh my God,
yes, 1967, exactly. So like even the energy of the time was big into sex, and then you had the generations of people born with that energy really started to act it out. And this is part of, for me, it's why when you connect it, you're going, well, no wonder LGBT in particular as a concept is so obsessive for most people. Why? Let's go down to the truth of what sex is all about, right? You know,
Yeah.
it's like, why do I have to be heterosexual? Why can't I be, homosexual, bisexual, or what have you, right? Like, what can happen? Because it's about that depth. And so Scorpio that's the intro part of it. Like that's the pop concept of it, that sexual component. But the other part of that component is understand that that Scorpio is the symbol of Scorpio is it's the scorpion. And the scorpion is known to live under a rock, to live in the shadows, and they won't go out until it knows it's safe. And so a big component of Scorpio from that thematic standpoint is the concept of trust. It will not move unless it knows it's safe to do so, and it trusts you to do so. And this is that concept when you're talking about the things that are going on in the world right now. Why is it that certain people are holding on to the trust of the system, holding on to the trust of the institutions, holding on to the trust of what really for the rest of us is a very clear lie? But why won't they get rid of it?
You want me to answer that?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, why is it that both men and women believe their partner, even though their partner is lying, cheating scum? Same concept.
Okay, go dig deeper. Come on.
You want to believe what you want to believe. I mean, the truth is so nasty and so ugly. Why do you think that you're now having the metaverse? The metaverse is there for you to escape the ugly reality and to create, quote unquote, create your own reality. Except there's a problem. It's not a reality. It's once again a dream. It's an illusion. It's a delusion. Why do you think people take drugs to escape reality? It's the same concept. It's just different flavors of the same thing, different flavors of the same, like the buffet of cakes in front of you. Some people take drugs. Some people, go to metaverse. Some people just decide to not believe, to escape, their nasty circumstances. So they make up these stories in their head.
So
And
I
some
love that
people,
you said that, by the way. I'm going to interrupt real quick. I love that you made that point. Love it. And what you talked about is truth is ugly. It's not pleasant.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Understand that the 8th house, Scorpio, it's a feminine sign. It's in the water. It's a water sign. And the water signs in particular do share a quality. That's why they trine each other, which means they're sister energies of each other. They share that energy with illusion. They share that energy with deception, because there's a natural desire to want to be deceived, that is in these places. But there's a problem in Scorpio. That's where you pay a price, right? That's where you pay a price for your deception. If you deceive yourself for too long in Scorpio, and if you try to indulge in the reality for too long in Scorpio, there's a price to be paid. And the price is very simple. It's death.
indulging in the fantasy.
When you indulge in the fantasy, you will die. And there's a lot of imagery that you tend to find when it comes down to VR. The darker imagery that you have is usually someone they're kind of decaying, or they have a skeleton. They're almost dead, but they're super happy wearing their little headset in their fantasy world, because in the fantasy world they're kings. In the fantasy world they have a mansion. In the fantasy world they have the hot wife. In the fantasy world they have all the virtual kids or what have you. But on the outside you see them for what they are, and they're decaying. They're on their way to death. And indeed, at some point they will die, because that's what occurs when you're not in line with truth. And that's one of the go ahead.
Well, I want to give people an understanding, like the similarities and the differences between Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio. And I'm just going to talk about this metaphorically, just to give people a vision. Cancer is like when you go with your family on vacation to the shore house, right? You're at the beach. You're not going out on the ocean. You're at the beach. You're still on land. You're having a good time. You're there with your family. You have that security, that fun feeling. You just know that you and your family are together. Nothing could go wrong. It's all about being happy and enjoying the good time. Pisces, Pisces is like you're going out into the ocean. You're not going deep underneath the ocean. You're actually going out on the top of the ocean. You're on a cruise ship. You look at the stars above you. It's night sky. It's relaxing. It's calming. It's dreamy, right?
Mhm.
That's like being on the Titanic, but without it crashing down.
Mhm.
Scorpio, you know what Scorpio is like? Scorpio is like going to that lake house. There's this big lake, the water is green, right? And you have that rafty looking post in the middle of the lake, and you're just so excited because you're like, I want to compete with my cousins or my friends, and let's see who could go there and reach that, reach the raft, the first one to reach the raft. And so you go in, you're swimming, you're going, having a good time. You're in your, the girls are in the little bikinis and the boys are in their trunk shorts, and they're feeling super sexy and alive, and they're teenagers and they're having a great time. But as they're going, right, to make it to their raft, something catches their foot, and all of a sudden they're getting pulled down deep, and they can't see where they're going because it's a lake. It's not clear. It's foggy. It's green. You know what it's at? That's like the one episode I watched on Tales of the Crypt, where everybody's going to have a good time, and there's some freaking goo that grabs you, and you have no idea what it is, and all of a sudden you're terrified.
Right.
That's the difference
Mhm.
between the three houses. You know what I mean? The experience, the feeling, that's why eighth house, Scorpio is like, it's so serious, it's so damn intense,
Well,
and it's like sudden,
well,
unexpected shit.
well, what about Pisces, real quick?
Pisces is more like, it's passive. It's like being on a cruise. You're having a great time. You're dreaming. You're thinking about your dream. You're using your imagination. Like you have all these wishes and relaxation. That's why Venus is amazing in Pisces, right? It's at the house of relaxation. That's like when you're on a resort, but out in the ocean. But it could be passive aggressive. It's a sensitive sign, where Cancer, it's more aggressive because it's that crabby crab. You know what I mean? It's like, it could be very moody. But
Mhm.
Scorpio is different. Scorpio is like, we're having a good time, but the first moment that I feel like you're threatening my life, I'll sting you so I could kill you before you have a chance to kill mine. You follow what I'm saying? Where
Right.
Cancer just puts up a good fight, and Pisces is like, if it's my time
Well,
to end, okay, so be it.
well, but keep in mind with Scorpio, that concept, especially when you said I'll kill you before you kill mine, you still have to actually, you still actually have to experience death to understand that that's actually a consequence.
Yeah.
And
Because
it's like
eighth
until
house
you
is
do
life
that,
and death.
right? Until you do that, you're still living in a fantasy, and this is the reason why it's sort of, when people like that, when you pay attention to what's going on, like in terms of who's awake and who's not, the common denominator is usually because for the rest of us, we actually got stung at some point. And we looked around and said, hey, wait a minute, this isn't working out the way I thought it was. This isn't working out the way you promised it would work out for me.
You know what's very
And
interesting? Let me tell you something. You've been programmed, think about it this way. You've been programmed to live a certain way by viewing these sitcoms, and these sitcoms teach you a lot about social human interaction. Now, if you've watched all of this, has anyone been happy with their life by going and following the cues of a sitcom? So, for example, let me give you a very embarrassing example. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I wanted the perfect life. And what was the perfect life? I picked a show that I thought was, how I would like to model myself. No, it wasn't Friends, thank God. I never watched that show, but anyway, it was one of those, Manhattan shows, because, that was my natural environment. And then I realized something after doing that stuff for about like 5 years and taking my social cues. I mean, not all of them, but the general flavor. I was miserable. And by the end of my 20s, I realized what a huge mess that was and what a huge lie was. By my early 30s, the fantasy was shattered, and I was like, okay, I need to start from scratch, because whatever social interaction I was taught by media is a complete and utter lie. And it's not going to make me happy. It's going to have me living a very neurotic, unfulfilled life with very unsuitable partners. So I had to start from scratch. I had to break the whole thing, down. I had to go and end the, relationships in a very final way. So that's about as the delusion runs deep, the fantasy runs deep, and everyone has been programmed here in the US and the West, if they take their social cues from media programming, how to be a certain way. And guess what? The truth is, if you want to be happy, if you want to be rich, if you want to be successful, you have to do it the complete opposite way. And you cannot get along. You cannot be amiable. You have to keep your circle small, and you have to be ready to, like, cut bridges and burn bridges at a moment's notice if someone's not good for you. Okay, that's hello.
That's a good point. That's
Mhm.
actually very, very interesting. And it's funny how you made that analogy, because I'll tell you something. I think that there's a lot of truth in what you're saying.
I mean,
Because
if it
what
worked for me, then there's a ton of people that probably have gone through the same thing and are probably not figuring it out, or are too embarrassed to, talk about it.
because when I think too about my life, I mean,
Mhm.
and you equate it to, like, a TV show. I mean,
Mhm.
immediately Dynasty came to mind.
Mhm.
Scandals
Mhm.
and, like, all kinds of, you know underhandedness,
Mhm.
illusions,
Mhm.
keeping a facade when there's some real shit going on behind closed
Mhm.
doors, you
Mhm.
know cheating, drugs, all these. I'm like, oh my God, like, totally. And then, dynasties, everyone keeping up with the Joneses. That was more
Mhm.
my era of how life was. But it's there's so much truth to that. And then when some part of that dies, where it's like your finance, you realize, your finances, your shared resources, your trust, as you brought up trust in the very beginning, all of that, like, gets squandered and goes out to the door. And then you're left with what? Nothing. What is the real value of life and relationships? Well, you have yourself, and that's where you start, and you build yourself
Yeah.
up again.
Mhm.
So it's almost like you get clean slated, because that's Scorpio. You could have everything taken away, like you said, in a moment's notice. Anything and
Mhm.
everything can happen and change,
Mhm.
and you have an
Mhm.
opportunity to completely rebuild yourself and create yourself in a completely brand new way, without those learned patterns. And the
Well,
learned
think
patterns,
about it.
you go on.
Think about it. These people, think about these programs and these sitcoms. The going. So I remember a long, long time ago, someone told me that, back in like decades and decades ago, they wanted to go and rent out an office building, on a very posh avenue of the city, because the mentality was, well, we will be sharing office space with very classy, very posh people. This is back in the 1930s, 1940s New York, very different times. And so the thinking went, well, if we're going to surround ourselves with posh people, we're going to become posh ourselves. And you know what? If you take that small little segment, and then if you apply it to TV segments, well, if I want to become like this and this person, I just need to conduct myself and do everything like this and this person. And all of these opportunities, whether financial, whether romantic, whether, living situations, habits, etc., they will go and happen to me too. And think about how sick and pervasive it is, because somebody probably knew this a very long time ago. And so they did this. And what they created was generations of very unhappy people with broken marriages, because they're like, oh, wait a second, the sitcoms, when I cheat on someone, I come back and I apologize and everything is wonderful and great. Oh, I went, I stole a car, but my dad still forgave me. Oh my gosh, I did drugs and my dad, instead of beating my ass, he went and said, it's okay, son, we're going to get you the help that you need. Like, think about like Bill Crosby and how Dr. Huxtable, like the gap between reality and fantasy is so large there, and people wanted to believe it because everything is wonderful, everything is nice, everything is wholesome, nothing really bad happens, and if something bad happens, it all works out, it's all a happy ending. Who wouldn't want to believe that lie?
And again, everyone necessarily does, because when it comes down to, again, all three of those signs have that fantasy component to it. And nobody wants to deal with the lessons of those signs until the time comes for it, especially the eighth house. The eighth house has such a heavy lesson to it. Everyone will do everything they can to the extreme not to deal with it. And again, the concept we're talking about here is Scorpio also as a fixed sign. And when you're talking about
it's the make it or break it sign.
Make it or break it. Exactly. And it's always an extreme energy, because every fixed energy is an extreme energy, is as deep as it can possibly get. And so for us as a collective, we're all dealing with this energy right now, because you have a lot of people who are holding on to the fantasy. And what is that fantasy at this point? My government loves me. They would never hurt me. My institutions, why would I ever not trust my doctor? Why would I ever not trust my lawyer, my whatever? And it's like, well, again, why is that? Because your ability to understand the world requires trust. The eighth house goes into the ninth house, and your worldview understanding, how you piece everything together, is found in the ninth house. You cannot get to the ninth house if you never develop something you trust in the eighth house. So until people really get hurt, until people really start dying, and they can make that connection to the people.
The countdown's already on.
Well, the countdown's down.
Let me finish the point. 8th. Hold on. December 8th is tomorrow.
I guess, yes, let me finish the point though. And the point is that until people make the connection that, oh my God, people around me are legitimately dying. They're actually falling apart. My world is falling apart. And then they make the connection, because I trusted these people. I trusted this, or I trusted that, or I trusted that. Until that occurs, they're going to hold on to that trust.
Part two.